Hello and welcome to episode 7 of the Autocar Business Changemakers podcast in association with Tomorrow's Journey. I'm Felix Page, I'm Autocar's news editor. Joining me as ever in the studio is Tomorrow's Journey CEO Chris Kirby, and we're joined today by Jordan Brompton, who is CMO at Myenergi. I think Myenergi is going to be one of the more familiar names to our listeners. But I thought we'd start, maybe you could just give us a bit of a backstory about where you come from and how the company's evolved since you started. It was 2016?
Yeah, so it's 2016, and hi, by the way, thanks for having me. 2016 that we started. It was myself and a guy called Lee Sutton that started the business. He's an electronics engineer, and we'd worked together previously in the renewable industry. We established in 2016 with the idea of self-consumption. So what does that mean? It means that if you've got solar panels on your roof or any form of microgeneration, wind turbine, hydro even, or solar, how are you going to keep that energy within the home? So we started out with a product called the Eddy, which is a power diverter. So if you've got, most cases it's solar, we invented this little gizmo that goes in the home, and if there's any excess power that's about to be exported to the grid, it'll divert it to a hot water tank or underfloor heating, towel rail. Basically, it's just a way of heating your home, decarbonising your home, and utilising every little bit of energy that you're generating yourself. And then I guess what catapulted us into the brand and everything that we are now was our electric vehicle charger, the Zappi. So we used similar technology, total different design, but similar technology and concept to divert the spare power from your solar to your car battery. And it just turned out that we were the first in the world to do that. And it was exactly what a lot of EV drivers were looking for. But because we've got such an interesting niche, and because we manage the home energy management so well, it's obviously it brought a lot of attention to the brand, and now we've got a battery storage system and everything as well. So it was 2016, 2 of us with a few engineers. Fast forward to now, and there's 350 plus staff. We've got a big factory that we're building in Grimsby. We manufacture it all in the UK ourselves, apart from the battery cells, before I start getting hate online. And the rest is sort of history. It's been a bit of a mad ride, if I'm honest.
Can you give me a quick dummies guide? I'm a technical idiot. A quick dummies guide to how the Zappi works. So how can I expect to sort of use that in the day-to-day life?
So what it does, it comes with a current transformer, a CT clamp that clips around the meter tails, and it monitors the import and export of the building, and if it senses any export, it'll divert the power to the car. But it'll also load balance the home. So if you've got even if you don't have solar, but you've got a lot going on in the home, you can have an eco mode, and if it senses that an electric shower's on or a kettle's boiling, it'll lower the power to the car to not warm up your main fuse, because back in the day there was just dumb chargers straight to putting full power straight to the car without any consideration of the grid, any consideration to what's going on in the home. So even people without solar were really seeing the benefits of this load balancing feature that we sort of introduced to the market with smart charging. So it's all about that CT clamp and load balance in the home, and then because it works with all the other products in the ecosystem, you can divert where you want the power to go within the home. So that's where all our IP is really, around how we monitor and measure the energy and stop it from going out to grid. Constant aim is to keep the power at zero, so not very much import and no export. It's essentially taking it off grid.
Yeah, nice. Okay, yeah, brilliant. And I think I'm probably going to ask some more technology-based questions, more for my own interest, I think, as we talked about before. But just, we don't always have it, with our guests pretty varied. We have some bigger companies, some smaller companies, but I think probably for you guys, because you're one of the founding team, interested a little bit about your kind of entrepreneurial journey, I guess. Most of these, I just find it super interesting. I have my own, and I like to hear the journeys people have been on. I think it's relatively underrepresented in our LinkedIn conversations that we have. Look how we're doing all this stuff, isn't it great? We won this award, we did this thing, we've hired these people, but the actual challenge of getting to the stuff from the 2016 start to a product to market to getting to 350 people isn't quite as linear as just a number of milestones, right? So I'm really interested in hearing a bit about that.
Yeah, I mean, it's been chaos and not easy by any stretch. I mean, I've had a few many breakdowns, like many bees as they call them. It's not easy, and it was fun in like the heyday. When you start something, I think you're so naive. Like I always had this dream of owning a big business and doing well. I've always been entrepreneurial. I had a business before Myenergi. So did Lee. So it was two characters that have always dabbled and been interested. But when you grow up in Grimsby, there's not crazy amounts of opportunities. It's not like I grew up around entrepreneurial parents. They've worked hard all their life, very working class, but I didn't have anyone to sort of look up to in that sense, so I had to carve my own way. I was looking up at like Elon Musk and thinking, why not, like, give it a go. But I've got a very, very colourful background. I've done everything because I never truly knew what I wanted to do, so I wasn't particularly academic at school. Tried super hard but just wasn't there. And I think my parents always did a great job of just saying, luckily you've got good communication skills, you're confident, you work hard, you try anything, I think that'll get you pretty far in life. And I just threw myself into work, like straight from school. Well, even before school, I was working on the local Sunday market, selling scooters on a Sunday, and that's where I realised that the guy was buying them for like a fiver and selling them for 15 quid, and I was like, ah. And I was getting a few quid commission, and that was at like 13, 14 years old.
Need to get him on an episode.
Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
So I was like,
mobility entrepreneur.
Yeah. So I thought, oh my God, like I started to get a flavour for business from a really young age. And then I was hustling, where I was doing like 3 or 4 jobs. I was very happy to have my own money and be independent from my parents. And then I tried a few little businesses, one as a sole trader, just doing different dance, because I was a dancer as well previously, like when I was young. So then I did like Zumba instructing and started teaching that around the town. Then I went off travelling, and that really opened my eyes culturally to like the world. And when I came back, that's when I met Lee. I just thought, I'm going to need a little job to keep me ticking over, to keep some money coming in. And that's where I met Lee, because he'd already invented this little device. He used to be a solar installer, and then he invented this little device to turn the thermostat like up and down, which is now like an old version of our current Eddy product.
Right.
And I was like, what an unbelievable guy. Like, no, he was shy as anything. Like, now he's an amazing CEO and he can hold the room and he's confident. But when I met him, he was like in a shed with some engineers, like typical can't say boo to a goose. And I just fell in love with like the whole idea of the renewable industry. I didn't know anything about it until that point. And I really thought, oh my God, I found my niche. Because I'd had businesses in cycling product. I had a company called Spitfire Distribution, which didn't do that great, but I was buying parts from France, cycling parts from France, and selling them to the UK. But I quickly realised that I hated being the middleman, like, because I was being squeezed by the supplier and I was being squeezed by the customer, and I realised that I was going to have to sell a crazy amount of volume to ever make any money or to be a success. So when I sort of met Lee and we went on, started this adventure together, I've never looked back. But it has been, I mean, I've had a baby in the time that we set Myenergi up. We put our houses on the line, the pair of us. We've had times where when COVID hit, obviously we thought that was the end, and it was just as we was on the up. We've had microchip shortages where, the industry is crying out for our products and we can't deliver it, and then we're scaling up production. We've experienced, growing pains. We've experienced market slowdowns because of the war and the cost of energy crisis, which the year before we were growing at 200%. Now we have to adjust, and we've committed to all the parts. So we've suffered a period of where we've had to lay off factory workers, and it's just been like the maddest roller coaster I've ever, like, I manifested it all, but I'm like, I didn't actually realise what I was wishing for when I got it. Careful what you wish for. Like, I don't regret it, and I love it, and I wouldn't want it any other way. But I've had to grow up like fast, and I already thought I was pretty mature. But owning a business and operating at this scale, like,
what's the roller coaster doing at the moment?
So we've just got over the hump of the last 6 months have been pretty tough, not going to lie, because we were delayed with our battery release. So we developed a battery called the Libby, and that was very much asked for by our customers. And it's the first sort of in the market to work with an ecosystem. So even like the Tesla Powerwall, for example, you've got the Powerwall, you've got the car, you've got the charger. It's not all speaking, and then throw in like heat controls and stuff like that. Customers have got multiple different apps for doing different things, and the battery's draining the car, and it's just, so we've tried to solve that problem, and we now understand why no one solved it before, because it's bloody difficult. So we were delayed with that. So we had the products on order, the actual batteries on order, which tied up a huge amount of cash. And so that was really hard. And then there's a hell of a lot of competition now for just EV charging in general. There's like 200 odd suppliers or something in the UK from all over the world. And it's like trying to hold on to your market share is not easy. And we're not self-funded anymore because we've got HSBC, thankfully, did us a revolving credit line of 30 million. But up until that point, we were pretty much self-funding off our own growth. We had initial investment in 2019 of 1.8 million, and then we've been growing off our own profits ever since. So when the size of the business, handling supply chain, market slowdowns, still growing, recruitment, it was time we got a bit of help. So our biggest challenge and our bit at the roller coaster, we've just come out of it feels like the market's picking up again after a bit of a slowdown through the energy crisis. We've just got over the redundancy process of where we had to lay some of our staff off because we were at 400 odd staff. And that's been really, really tough. It's not been nice for management. It's been really sad for everybody involved. Obviously devastating for the ones that have lost their jobs, but we did it so that we had a business to maintain and hopefully recruit those people again when everything's back where we hoped it would be this time last year. Yeah. But it sounds doom and gloom, but it's actually not, because when you look at the figures and everything, we've still grown. We've still grown a ridiculous amount. It just wasn't at the same rate of knots as last year when there was grants and subsidies and no cost of living and energy crisis. So we're just getting over that, if I'm honest. And we've shipped our first load of Libbies. We sold out of them in 15 minutes, which we didn't anticipate. And that's
how many was that?
That was 1,600 units in the first drop. 15 minutes gone. So we're now studying that, trying to organise the order book and make sure that we've got a constant supply of batteries coming over, which we've never had to do because that's now something that we're buying from China, from CATL, and K-Star are our suppliers, and then we manufacture the controller that goes in it that gets it working with the whole system. So it's just new waters again, new territory. We're in Belgium, the Netherlands, so I call it the Benelux region, Ireland, Australia, Germany. All their markets experienced the same sort of slowdown as the UK did, so it was a global macro thing, but they're all picking up again and they're all desperate for the Libby product, but there's different levels to compliance and stuff like that, so we're just working out all of that.
Yeah,
and then starting to ship. Yeah. So I'm sorry, that's a very long-winded, honest answer as to where we're at right now.
Yeah, I do think that kind of things are really important, and definitely something that I try to do more of, because I guess as a founder of a tech business, you are the face of, and almost to some extent you are the company, so you have to tell a positive story for customers and investors and all of that stuff, but it is always that roller coaster. For every success there's 5 bits of pain behind it, the bits that you can't see. And I remember saying to someone recently, I had a situation where I wrote a LinkedIn post about, I've been so busy in May, we've done all this stuff, we've been to Abu Dhabi, we've signed this new deal, we've gone live with Hyundai, all these things. But I remember coming off doing that off the back of a call going, we've got 10 days till we run out of money. Those
That's
things.
It.
But it's LinkedIn says, and everyone's going, you guys are smashing it, well done, high five. And I'm going, oh, are we? And again, thankfully for us, we've had that same kind of similar 6 months, but it's a bit underrepresented, I think, like all things in social media, but LinkedIn for entrepreneurship, I think is that bit.
So I suppose morale must be so important, especially when you're a small team at the start.
Definitely. It is. It's so hard, and I've always I cannot not be honest, and I think it's really important to share the highs and lows of it. But it's when you've gone from being hyped up and all this, and then but something as ginormous as the macro and the whole industry is suffering, you can't just keep putting a face on it, and especially when there's stuff in the news and there's staff being made redundant. It's a little bit like I had a bit of a media blackout and a bit of a time where I went a bit quiet because I thought I don't want to be disrespectful to the people that have lost their jobs. It's really tough out there at the minute, but it's you're trying to sell the good story, you're trying to sell the growth, but you're also I just like to be real about it. It's certainly not easy, and I still feel like we're a startup, even though we're not. I still feel very much like we are, because every single month it's changing and a new challenge, so you just feel like you're constantly on your toes. I've just got used to this feeling of discomfort. I'm not moaning, I love it because it keeps me interested and But it is just, it's hard. It's tough.
It's
tough
the
going.
same thing. I always have to caveat any of those things with exactly what you say. I wouldn't do anything else. I'm not moaning.
I'm not whinging.
Definitely, someone said to me a few months ago, I met someone, I was just telling them about, I think it was actually one of our customers hadn't paid us for ages, and it was a similar thing, like if they don't pay us by payroll, I was going to have to put my own money into my payroll. And they're like, my God, you must be having a panic attack. I was like, I think I've just been having a panic attack since 2017. I think it's just the same panic attack. I've just got used to it. I've just got used to different levels of panic attack.
You carry it well.
Yeah, thanks. Well, you realise that you can't do anything else.
You
You haven't got time to sit and like panic about it, really.
You must take some reassurance, though, from the fact that people, not just your customers, but society in general, is becoming more aware of the need for products like your own. You know, that need to maintain the energy you generate and not waste anything.
Well, yeah, you say that, and maybe 6 months ago I might have agreed with you but I'm starting to sense a bit of a shift again, and I don't know if it's because I don't want to like bash the media, but at the minute, like, I feel like electric vehicles are being demonized, or like even climate change is starting to be like a conspiracy theory, or like seen as some contentious view. And just after COVID, I thought, oh my God, the consciousness has woken. People understand it. People get it. After felt the clean air and of everybody slowing down a little bit, I thought maybe people are actually really starting to understand this, because that's why I fell in love with the renewable industry. But there's something in the air at the minute where it feels like it's being turned on a little bit, like it's a bit, and I'm like, I thought the education piece was sort of over and the scales were tipping, but I just don't think it'll ever be over. I think we just have to lead by example and just constantly show what the products can do. And even if you're not doing it for climate change, surely you agree that one day oil will run out, and what we're supposed to do, just sit on our hands until that day and not progress and have different technologies. And I think especially with energy security, as we've seen with what's happened with the war, and how there's just so much, we've got to take these massive amounts of power out of certain influence, and if we can all do our little bit, the ones that can afford it, the ones that have got the roofs, the ones that have got the driveways, if we've got this tech in our homes, we're reducing the reliance on the mains grid and on the mains power. We're allowing more large renewables onto the system, and then we're balancing our own homes, and we're in control of our own destiny. And that's sort of like why I do it and what the passion behind Myenergi is. Yeah,
as you say, it should be an absolute no-brainer. It's one of the things that we've talked about it on a previous podcast about. It's kind of become a bit politicized, and when it becomes politicized, it becomes polarized, and then you've got people who go, well, I don't believe in it because I'm with this side, and then people who go, I'm going to put it, and there is a middle ground in between. Like, not everybody can have an electric car today. Like, not everybody can have solar and all these, but it has to be the direction of travel. It's either like people are going, oh, I'm going to do it, or I'm going to be like completely against it. And it's just,
and I started the business like, I'm ambitious. I wanted to make money, wanted a successful business, loved the industry, and it's almost like that's demonized and that now as well. And it's like, I think, oh my God, just what can you say? I just try not to play into any of the polarizing games. I don't want to be branded as some sort of Greta Thunberg that's like preachy to everybody or whatever. But I think if everybody's just doing like that 1% that they can, or 1% what they can afford, or that one little change, if everybody's doing that collectively, we're all.
So how do you communicate with customers, with the media? What's the message of Myenergi?
I literally, like, it depends who you're talking to. So it's very much, we stay true to our mission, which is to decarbonise heat and transport, and like just to do our bit within the home. So we're very residential focused. And I think once people understand, like, oh my God, the value of solar on the roof and then using all of that energy, it's pretty much a no-brainer, whether you're a cost saver, so whether you're speaking to the people who are trying to just save some money, or whether you're speaking to people that care about the planet, the message can change, but both of them lead us to the same thing, which is energy independence. So that's what we always sort of stick the messaging around.
Yeah, okay. I think that is such an interesting challenge. I know when we've discussed it before, it's a thing, personally I'm really interested in, about trying to get almost effectively to get you off grid, and electric cars gives you a real opportunity for that. And I guess in your like ideal setup then, to kind of technologically, how would you, if you were buying a home, to building a home or whatever it would be, how would you kind of set this up for the ideal solution?
I just think as off-grid as possible. So if you're starting out with that intention, and is obviously sustainable with your materials as possible, and efficient, but I look at my home now, I've dreamt about it all my life, to be off grid, and I used to look at off grid people that live in the woods and they're like wiring up some little solar panel and hunting themselves and everything. And I like it that we're modern day off grid. Yeah. So I've got solar on the roof, I've got a heat pump, I've got 2 of our Eddy products, one powering underfloor heating from surplus solar, like a buffer tank, one heating my hot water tank, top, bottom, and so I never pay for my heating. Like for half the year, I'm pretty much covered, even on bright days through the winter. My heating's looked after. I've got 10 kilowatt hours of Libby storage, so when I've not got my car plugged in, Eddy's doing its thing, it then goes to the Libby, and then on a night time I'm using the power from the sunshine from the day to power my home at the peak most expensive times of energy. So I'm just like loving it all year round. Then you can go a step beyond what I'm seeing customers do now, and what's so good about these smart energy tariffs that are coming out, which all our products work with as well, is if you can't have solar yet, even the economics of the battery storage system stack up if you're going to charge it on off-peak power to then power your home when the demand is so much. Like just that alone does such a big difference on the grid. So I just think building a home efficient, definitely look at battery storage, definitely look at solar, make sure it's fit for the future with either a socket ready to have an EV charger installed, because you probably, well, if the 2030 ban stays in place and you're wanting a new car, like a new one, you will have to go electric. But yeah, I just think there's so much coming on the market. There's so many cool ideas that would be my way to go. Just always include solar.
Yeah, nice.
Make sure you're building it south-facing if you can. Yeah. If you was going to do new build, but all of this stuff can be retrofitted as well. So even a little bit of solar and then a smart energy tariff will save you an absolute fortune and do your bit on your energy usage.
Yeah, awesome. We're talking a bit, going back to the kind of media piece again. One of the things that I think is always interesting for us is a bit of myth busting. Typically our audience are like relatively educated industry people, so we're not necessarily talking to the consumer here, but I do still think, and I do still hear in conversations I have, some kind of the myth challenges. But I guess from your perspective, like what are some of the big ones that you're still hearing? I guess the grid can't take it.
The grid's going to melt.
The grid's going to melt, yeah.
Well, I just love acting that one with our tech, because we've done some math, and when we've got 1 million customers in the UK, we'd have 7 gigawatts of flexible power. Right. So all of our products have been built with frequency response and demand side response built into them from the off, so that the prosumer will be able to choose whether they offer balancing mechanisms to the grid. So if there's peaks and troughs in demand, they can give power back or reduce the power in the home. And 7 gigawatts of flexible power, that's pretty massive. Like Drax is our biggest power station in the UK, and that's 4 gigawatts. So I try to explain to people that by having this smart tech in the home, it's actually so bloody powerful, and the grid's not going to melt if you're doing it from your own home. And then eventually, like, there's going to be vehicle to grid and vehicle to X. There's already some chargers on the market that allow that. It's just a race to see whether it's going to be AC or DC. I think it's going to go AC because the inverters are in the car. So why are you going to put a chunky inverter on the side of your house to do that conversion, when you could just take the power straight out of your car through a standard socket, like a charger, like a Zappi, and power the home as well, and power the grid, essentially. So I'm like, the grid's not going to melt. There's already plenty of people out there, like amazing. Even the National Grid send people out to do talks to say, look, this is how many cars we can have on, this is how much power we can take. Like, the infrastructure needs putting in here, here, and here. As long as you're having smart products that are doing load balancing or can be connected down streets, which already exists, like the tech already exists. People just don't know about it. It's just the naysayers and clickbait that like to, if people are scared and there's a narrative, people are going to click and read it, aren't they?
Is there a future maybe in which legislation supports the uptake of smart devices like the ones that you're selling?
And they already do. Like, they put in the smart charging regulation like last year, and that threw the market into a bit of a tiz, because it was quite a lot of change that needed to be around it. I wish they'd consulted a little bit more with people that have been doing it for a long time, because luckily we've got people on the committees that go, hang on a minute, if you put that in there, that means people won't be able to self-consume their own power. But they would have done it unknowingly, like just some little clause would have. So they need to be speaking to tech companies that are leading the way to have, because we're innovating. We're not like, it's usually the regulators are a little bit behind the innovators, and it's all about working together. But I do think they're trying the best. I think we're quite market leading as a country, really, for this sort of stuff with load balancing and grid and demand side response and AI and smart grids. And virtual power plants and stuff, I think we're doing pretty well. And I think, if you look at America, that's a huge opportunity about to open up, but I do think they're about 3 to 5 years behind the UK in terms of technology for this stuff.
Yeah, I think generally in this part of the market, if you take everything from mobility into kind of EV transition and into China charging, they're quite a bit behind. I went to the Move conference, the big one that's in the UK. I went to their US one last year, and it was like Move 2019 when we were there. People were like, so this car subscription thing, you're like, oh right, okay. So I think it does feel like, oh, what's this electric? These electric cars are cool. It's like, okay, right,
oh my god, the opportunity. It's huge,
definitely. I think there's definitely people switching on to that.
Trying to think of other myths for you. There's obviously a few. Like, I think I still hear range anxiety being brought up, but like the cars, batteries now are so big that you can do. Like I just drove in the Audi from Grimsby to London, and it had 80 miles left on it. Didn't stop once. Yeah. And chose a hotel with a charger. Yeah. I'm like, it's bloody brilliant. Like, people think, and that's a slow charger that's just going to charge overnight. People panic like hell, but I hardly ever use a public network. I just use like destination charging, or lucky because I've got a driveway, I can use home charging. But there's, even if you haven't got a driveway, there's really like ace initiatives now where people like co-charge and stuff like that. Apps where people will hire out their driveways for you, and you can just, do a transaction swap for energy or... so I think there's so many ways to innovate around it yet, and already myths being smashed wide open that it's just clickbait.
Yeah, I think almost in a way it like drives to clickbait. It's almost a point of desperation. Pull out some more. I think like the all car parks collapsing under the weight of electric cars is my favourite one. Someone really sensible. One of my friends said it to me the other day, and I was like, "Is this a joke?"
Yeah,
he was like, "No."
Probably drives a Defender or something as well. Like, exactly, there's like loads of Ranges, Defenders. Like, how have we been coping all these years? Like, it's totally fine. And most EVs, I mean, they're not even that big. They're quite small.
Well, to be fair, I wouldn't put my money on that car park that we've parked in today.
That's hell.
That is a 60.
But it would be good. Probably a good thing if that. But it's like anything. It's a bit like the grid stuff. I think it's where if you took an absolute worst case scenario that would never happen. If you filled, the car park that we've all parked in today, if you filled that with Tesla Model X's, I mean, it's never full anyway. But if you filled it with Tesla Model X's, would it go outside of what it was originally designed to hold? Maybe, but like. That's not a thing. It's the same with it. If you replaced every car on the road now with an EV and plugged them all into a home charger at the same time, would it overload the grid? Probably.
Exactly. That's no one does it. Like, it's such a common misconception. That is it as well. Like, how often you need to charge. Like, you plug your phone in or whatever every single night because they don't hold the tiny batteries. These cars, like, I probably plug mine in like once a week, if that, depending on how busy or how many miles I do on the road. And I'm on the road a fair bit. And but if I do, I'll just plug it in, leave it in eco mode, and let the solar trickle charge it throughout. Like, I do not miss going to a fuel station. Genuinely, I hate it.
That's my favourite, like
not
counter myth, but it's not countering directly a myth. But people, like one of my mates was saying to me the other day, I couldn't do it because one time a year we drive to Exeter and you'd have to charge on the way. And I was like, how many times do you go to a petrol station?
Yeah, count up that time.
I was like, I haven't been to a petrol station since I got mine like 9 months ago. Well, I do, because the sausage rolls at the M&S that's really good. But you don't.
Who are we kidding?
Yeah, exactly. Who are we kidding? Have you got any fuel? I wish there was actually an excuse to come here more often. But yeah, like that bit of just being my petrol station's at home. Yeah, it's such an easy thing. But I'm the same thing. Like, charge once a week. I'll charge twice this week because I've been here 2 days in a row. But yeah, just that the range isn't an issue. Public charging is good. Yeah. If you plan your stuff. So yeah, I definitely think it's.
And I was scared for the, like, I'm not gonna lie, because I'm such a Tesla fangirl. Like, I can't even, people whinge at me for it, but I'm an Elon fangirl and I'm a Tesla fangirl, and I always will be. And I've had a Tesla, like, I had a Nissan Leaf first and foremost, and I drove to Orkney in it. That was one of my first like major voyages. I went to meet Bobby Llewellyn to show him the Zappy. It was before it like took off, and I did it. It had 55-mile range. So this was in 2017, early 2017. It was freezing. It was in the winter, and it did 55 miles. And I had to drive it from Grimsby to Orkney, and I had to stop 12 times to charge. And it took me all through the night as well. And oh my God, it was brutal, and that's the only time I knew the public system, because I'd rock up at a charger, wouldn't work, I needed a different app for it, I needed something else, or I'd rock up and a gate would be shut because it was 5 a.m. and I couldn't get in, and I couldn't have the heating on, so I was in a sleeping bag, and I thought, this is proper early adopter stuff. And then I'm being online trying to sell my business like, electric cars are great.
I think my passion would have taken a knock at that point, about 3 a.m. at some point.
As the camera's steaming up on your phone.
Yeah. It was savage. And then I had Tesla, and then I was totally spoiled and couldn't relate to anybody having public charger issues, because Tesla's is so slick, so smooth, they've nailed it, and that's why they're so ahead of the game. But then I thought, you know what? It's a few years on now. I know that, the standards have changed, that it's all contactless payment. You ain't got to have all these different apps. There's a lot more fast chargers on the motorways now, and the GridSurf bought Ecotricity, and they're good friends of mine. I thought, right, I'm going to risk it. I'm going to put my Tesla aside. I'm going to try something new. And I'm having so much fun with it. I ain't had one problem yet. Rocked up straight to a public charger, tap, go. 20 minutes, I'd had a little Starbucks, and I was ready to go again after.
The frustration isn't it, that car that you've come in here today is, I think, the fastest charging EV you can currently get in the UK, and I lived with one for a bit. But the trouble is when you pull up at a fast charger with your fast charging car, and you're still only pulling 30 kilowatts off the grid.
Annoying.
That is frustrating. Yeah. And I think maybe that's one of our next obstacles, is just to educate people with regard to, you're not always going to top up as fast as you can. Yeah,
depending on what grid's doing.
Exactly, and I think people resent having to plan around that uncertainty to an extent. But what I wanted to ask you was, do you think does your business model factor in advances in public charging infrastructure, advances in different forms of mobility? How are you adapting to that?
No, not so much the public. I mean, we get asked for it a lot, like public charging infrastructure, and we've just put in OCPP, which is, finally, everybody's been whinging at us for ages, and it is a pretty common language that all chargers speak, and all the public chargers speak it, and if you've got fleets and things like that, it needs to speak OCPP language so that it can connect to different back offices and stuff. But because we've been so focused on the home, it was just a chunk of work that we weren't ready to do because we're not in that market. But we thought, right, we need to now, because there's more and more people having Zappies at work and at home, so that's where we've sort of shifted a little bit of focus so that we can have them in large fleets and at home. But in terms of like public infrastructure, no. And the cars, they all have to follow regulation, they all have to follow the same sort of standards, but how they interpret the standards is very different. So we do get some cars doing some weird and wonderful stuff, and then obviously it's always our fault because we build the charger to a standard, and everybody interprets things different, and so we do whatever we can to work with all the quirks that the OEMs throw out with their updates, and we'll do something with the software to match it if we have to be on top of that. Sometimes some of the brands are worse than others for doing it, but there's nothing too hectic that's changing that I can see in terms of tech. I know there's stuff like underfloor, what do you call it, where the charging's not actually on a plug, it's like
inductive.
There's people talking about that, and obviously the roads that charge.
I might have got that wrong. It might be induction.
That's the one. Yeah. Is it? Oh, I don't know.
Someone will tell us.
Yeah, someone will tell us.
The thing that, like, when you put your phone on it,
wireless charging.
I think that. Magic.
Yeah. But I'm like, we'll see where that goes. I think the next thing is going to be vehicle to grid and vehicle to X, because although consumers don't really understand necessarily what it means yet, some do, the early adopters, but mass market doesn't. It's like there's quite a lot to iron out with that, like who's going to look after the warranty of the battery in the car, how many life cycles can it have, what, when you start dabbling with the car's battery to power home and grid, there's quite a lot of nuance there to work out, and whether it goes AC, DC, things like that. But I think for a while, like, each home has got power. There's nothing wrong with like a cable. Do we really need, like, I'm sure some people will put wireless charging in and park on a pad instead of plugging it in, but what? Really? I
think it's lots of stuff like that in tech where there's some real niche use cases for it, but becoming mainstream. And I think they often get presented as like a mainstream option. Oh yeah, you'll just pull up at home and it'll charge. Yeah. Like, totally unnecessary engineering that you need, because plugging in takes 30 seconds. If you're electric taxi on a taxi rank and you're moving down the rank and you want to charge while you're waiting, like, okay, it kind of makes sense. And maybe delivery van stands and that kind of thing. That kind of makes it a bit easier if you need to charge for like a few minutes and then move and keep charging. That kind of fine.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think definitely that the plugging in like isn't an issue. I've got a really bad cut on my hand getting my charging cable out of my Polestar the other day. So
it's dangerous game.
Going to Polestar.
A magnet would never do that to you.
No, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Other than that, it's pretty. It takes like 30 seconds to plug your car in when you get home. It's
exactly.
not too.
I was just. Can you use? Do you ever talk about the implications your Zappi has for battery health of the car, for example? Because we hear a lot about how fast charging can negatively impact battery life.
Yeah. So actually, like trickle charging your car from solar or slower charging your car is a whole lot better for the battery. Instead of like we always say, the batteries. The batteries control themselves, essentially. The OEMs know what they're doing to protect the battery life, and the charger's essentially responding to a signal to the car. The charger can only put what the car allows it to do, but just like the physics, I guess, of it, I don't know, whatever it is, the chemistry of the battery cell, they just like being slowly charged and often, not like blitzed full, emptied, blitz full, emptied, blitz full. So I think that slower charge is better for the battery longevity from what I hear.
Yeah, so for the home charger, and then particularly if it's home from like direct from solar and that type of thing, it's definitely better.
But even if you haven't got solar, just if you're not in a rush, just put it in like a lower ampage. You don't have to charge it at the full 7 kilowatts that the home allows. You could drop it down to 16 amps or something, 3 kilowatts, and just let it trickle charge, slowly charge, so you're not putting too much pressure on your main fuse, of the home.
Yeah, interesting. And in terms of your kind of growth, so we talked a bit at the start about the kind of business and where you guys are at. Kind of what's next for you guys? You've got a few interesting partnerships and things that are kind of I've seen announced and things that are coming. So kind of what's in the next sort of 12 months for you guys?
So definitely constantly watching the market and how it's evolving, and what we're seeing is it's becoming more mainstream now. Like our market is becoming more mainstream, which means like how do we get to customers? Because historically we've gone through wholesale, through trade, and that was our route to market. But we're seeing a lot more people buy cars through the likes of their bank, not cars through the likes of the bank, but smart home tech. Like we've just partnered with Santander because they're trying to encourage people to greenify their homes. And then Cinch, we've just launched with Cinch. So when people are at the point of buying the car, naturally we're starting to look at that. And I think some of these car companies are looking at ways that if they're not going to be able to, because electric vehicles don't need like servicing as much as the traditional engine vehicle does, so how are they going to recoup some of the costs or extras that they make? And they're now looking at the home, like battery storage, solar and stuff like that. So we're seeing a lot of inbound demand from some of the larger companies who have a lot of customers, and now we've got production up and running and we can churn out these products at volume. It's now like, how do we get to a more mass market? So we're looking at models like that. So we'll always go through our traditional route, we'll always look after our installers, but we're also going to pull them in for the journey as well and partner them with some of these big customers and connect the dots for the end consumer. So tidying that up and making sure that the journey for the end consumer is smooth instead of sending them off here, there and everywhere, trying to get a nice smooth customer journey has been a big focus this year. And new market entry, because we've got we are in other markets anyway. We're developing the products so that we can sell them in every market that we're in because they're crying out for them. But then also looking at new places. We haven't done anything in France, Spain, Italy hasn't done too much. We've got a focus on the Nordics. We used to sell into Norway, but then it sort of dropped off a little bit. But we're getting a lot of demand now for our battery storage because their market seems to have sort of what do you call it? When it's settled down a little bit, stabilised, like they're ahead of us, but now it's plateaued. Right. I think now they're looking at other bits, not just EV charging. So it's just following the trends and doing what we need to do as a business to keep growing and definitely internationalise, definitely bring out new products. Like we've got a list as long as our arm of products that we want to develop. So we'll, continue to focus on that hard. You
can't give us any clues, I guess.
It's all around the home, so definitely we're definitely looking at more control, like heat controls and more innovation around battery storage, and we're getting a big demand for larger battery storage, which is interesting. So there's lots of different ways that it could go, but I think our focus is always going to be around the home. We haven't even scratched the surface on what we can do with that app as well. Like, the app is just so good and so engaging to the customer. We've not really developed it too much over time, but I think now we're getting, because we've been focused on the hardware, but I think there's so much that we can do with innovation around the app and gamification of renewables and
what's your ultimate vision for the app? What would you be able to do on it in a dream scenario?
I just there's quite a lot, to be fair. Like, I want to get the customers a lot more engaged with what it actually means by being a Myenergi customer, like just how much carbon they're saving, and just like, you know, giving them a massive pat on the back, giving them some rewards for what they're doing, and if they've balanced the grid, like, share that earning. You know, there's a lot. I've got a lot of ideas for that.
It's amazing what that sort of incentivization can do. I've driven cars where it gives you sort of an eco score at the end of the journey, and it rates your deceleration. Are you regenning as much as you possibly can? Are you accelerating slowly enough?
I'm
blah,
so
blah,
addicted
blah.
to that stuff.
And if I get less than 90% on a long journey, absolutely. I have to go back and do it again.
I miss the little Christmas trees on the Nissan Leaf. The first car I had used to get like little Christmas trees, random as hell, and like the most I ever saw I think was about 6 or 7, and I was absolutely buzzing, like didn't want it to be wiped out. I thought that's got to be like an absolute record.
Like your high score.
I'm driving like a little granny, like, no disrespect to grannies, but I'm driving like so slow, watching these little leaves stack up. But again, there's so much stuff. It's like we could say, you know, You've saved this much energy, you've saved this much power, this is what you've saved off your energy bill. Do you want to donate it to the polar bears, or do you want to donate it to your local community who can't afford energy, or do you just want to like pay off your own energy bill? You terrible person.
Are you sure you want to be a terrible person? Yes, I
lose 50 points.
There's so much fun stuff we could do with it. So I can't wait to get stuck into that, really.
Yeah, that'd be really cool.
And in terms of like that's kind of in the short term in startup land. But what's the kind of long term vision? What's the?
I just want to throw a Drax party. I just want to like say that, oh my God, we've got 7 gigawatts of flexible power, and just have a huge party for all of our customers, for everyone that's been on the journey, and just go, this is how we can decarbonise. And I've always put that out there as well, like that out there. I'll just throw a huge party for everybody and go, look what we've achieved. Like, that is amazing. Whether we're doing anything with that power or not, I just find that such a huge and powerful thing to get to. Like, so in my mind, that 1 million customers in the UK, because we've already shipped like, I think it's coming up 600,000 devices, but that's across our markets. So when in a few years' time, when we get to that 1 million customers in the UK, that's a real goal for me, and then I'll be like, right, okay. And I have got a little bit of an internal like itch for the States. I think lots of us Brits want to conquer the States, whether you're a musician or whatever. The States is like the dream, and it's complicated over there because it's different in every state. But I just think they'd love us. I just think they'd like really like. I think there's a gap for this product and for the brand, and I already do a bit of work out there. With the racing and stuff like that, sponsor the racing, and I just love the Americans, and I think the opportunity over there is huge, and if we could crack it, that would be amazing. But it's going to take a lot of capital, a lot of work. There's a lot of regulation to figure out, like the UL certification, and what we do is not easy. We don't just sell a car charger. If we did, that'd be pretty straightforward. But because we sell an ecosystem, because homes work so differently, because everything's so different, it's quite a challenge. But if we're up for it, so may as well give it a go.
I heard someone told me the other day that a very small percentage of US homes have a kettle. So there might be, apparently.
What do they do?
Well, no tea.
Just don't have a cup of tea.
It's the biggest thing.
Yeah, I guess so. What do these people do?
Exactly. What they do at 6 o'clock in the evening. One thing I wanted to ask you, just again for my benefit more than anything else, is what can we do with that 7 gigawatt of flexible power? What are the implications of that?
I just think like that's a huge amount to take pressure off the grid. So when there's like, you know, the World Cup's on and everyone's boiling a kettle at the same time.
Not in the US.
No, not in the US. We'll be able to go, don't worry, guys, we got you. Yeah. If everybody in London, it might not even be, it'll only be in grid constrained areas. If we can go, right, all the zap is in this area, just load shed down by 1 kilowatt. The home won't notice it. Just 1 kilowatt each, and then the grid would pay you for that, for being responsive to that. It means they haven't had to strike up coal stations. It means it means that we're truly decarbonising the grid, because you're not having to power up hefty power plants.
Myenergi powers half-time cup of tea in World Cup final. There
just
you go.
Stuff
Headlines
like that. Just fun. Do you know what I mean? And just a
yeah.
huge pressure off our system, which means that we can get more renewables onto it. And as a country, we're more energy independent. It's just, my God, it genuinely excites me.
Yeah. It's amazing how symbolic in the transition of the energy market and all this talk about the grid. It's amazing how symbolic that evening cup of tea is.
Yeah.
It feels like it represents so much.
Yeah.
But I think we better bring this to a close, unless you had any closing thoughts or anything you wanted to sum up. Thank you so much for joining us. We're going to be fact checked on inductive charging and the amount of US homes.
Inductive
I'm going to have loads of Americans message me to tell me about their kettle now as well, which is
we've got kettles. Yeah.
But thank you very much to Jordan. Thank you, Chris, for coming in. As always, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.